Thank you for tuning into Literary Blend, a publishing podcast. I'm your host, Demi Michelle Schwartz. There's no perfect recipe for chasing a dream in the publishing industry, but I hope the conversations on this show give you the ingredients you need to bake yours into reality. So let's flip the page and get into this chapter of Literary Blend. Hi friends, welcome back to Literary Blend. Today's chapter is called All About Audiobook Narration. And joining me on the show to chat all about audiobooks is Kathleen Li. Hi Kathleen.
Hi, Demi. How are you?
I'm great, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, can't complain.
Yeah, amazing. I'm super excited to have you on to chat all about audiobooks. But before we do that, I would love for you to share with the listeners a little about yourself and how you got started in audiobook narration.
Okay. Well, I've always been interested in acting and voice acting, and I took some classes years ago. And it wasn't until I went in to record some voice commands for a Siri-like assistant that a studio director told me that I had the perfect voice for narrating children's audiobooks. And I had never thought of that. That had never even been on my radar. So it was sort of accidental, but looking back, it's actually a natural progression of my career, which started with newspaper journalism, and then I veered into technical writing and marketing and online content management. And all of those jobs were involved with telling stories in some form or fashion. And to me, audiobook narration is just another dimension of that.
That is amazing. I can agree that you have a great voice for audiobook narration.
Oh, thank
When you,
you.
yeah, you're welcome. When you first heard that, like, how did you feel about it to be told that?
Yeah, I mean, I was flattered and I thought, "Oh, well, that's great," because, I have 2 kids, and when they were little, I would always read stories to them before they went to bed, and, I'd act out the voices and how parents like to do that and stuff, and so I thought, "Oh, I could maybe try that," and I decided to look into it, and you know what the ironic thing is, Demi, is that so, children's audiobooks was kind of the impetus. It was kinda like the reason why I got into all this, but it wasn't until maybe just a few years ago. I've been doing this for 7 years. So, just a few years ago, that's when I finally did my first children's audiobook. So, the market, well, especially on in the auditions world, and is mostly for adult audiobooks. There's not as many children's audiobooks out there as you would think.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. Did you have to get used to hearing your voice so often and editing your voice? Is that something you had to get used to?
Yeah, yeah, it's a little strange in the beginning, because what you think you sound like when you're just talking as opposed to what you sound like when you're recorded, I'm sure as you are aware, it sounds different somewhat, and, yeah, so but I've gotten used to it. I do a lot of talking to myself in my booth, so I'm my own best friend.
That's funny. Yeah, I definitely had to get used to hearing myself with the podcast, and also, like, more than that, because I'm a songwriter too, and when I first started recording music, it was like, "Oh, I hate the sound of my voice," but now I'm over that, thankfully. Oh, well, awesome. So let's get into our chat deeper. First, I wanted to talk specifically about the importance of audiobooks as a format for accessibility purposes and just for another option for people when they want to read books, but maybe can't read an ebook or a paperback for one reason or another. So I'm curious what you have to share about this.
Well, one of the really nice things about audiobooks is that it continues this whole oral tradition, like through history, stories have been passed down orally, through storytellers and all this. And so it's just like another outlet for that. And the reason why it's so nice to have human narrators bring that story alive is because they have that human voicing, the nuance, the emotion, the volume. We can vary everything, the pacing, and do different voices. And AI narrators, they can't do that because they don't have a soul or a heart. They can't feel what's going on in a scene or the subtext, right? They can't express the grief, the joy, the sarcasm. And just like how human authors write from the heart, human narrators, they tell stories with their heart, not just with their mouths and minds. So that's my promo for human narration. So support human voices. Um, and you mentioned how it can help. Yes, it can help people who might have problems reading on the page, right? So it fortunately, it helps improve reading skills. Like I think I saw this one. There was one study done by MIT that found that kids who struggled with their reading, they improved their reading skills when they supplemented with audiobook listening. And so, and from what I've read also that audiobooks, when you listen to an audiobook, it stimulates the same parts of the brain as visual reading does. It's like there are different ways to read. Totally not the same way, but there's different ways to consume a book, right? And my one of my other favorite reasons for audiobooks is that it offers convenience, for busy schedules. Like people can listen to them while they're cooking or doing other chores, driving, traveling. And my favorite place to listen to an audiobook is in the car. Sometimes I will just stay in the car just because I want to keep listening, because especially if it's a really, really good narrator or a good story, right? So, and for authors, audiobooks also provide an additional market for their books, for because there's going to be people who are out there who don't really like to read. Imagine that. But they like to listen, so people have different ways of absorbing content. And so you might attract all those listeners who want to, listen to your book, not read it.
Yeah, all of that is amazing. I agree with everything that you said. I'm definitely on the side of audiobooks count as reading for sure. I know this is a debate often, which makes me really
Mhm.
sad. It should not be
Oh my
a topic
gosh.
of discussion. But yeah, I think like not only for accessibility, but like you said, the convenience and for people who maybe aren't big readers, this is a way for them to engage with stories. And nowadays, like however we can get people to read, let's get people to read. Also, your point on the human narration, absolutely. That's all I'll say on that. No one wants to be ranting about AI, which I can go on about. Not a fan, completely against it, but like the human narration, you get like, and I'm sure like I don't have an audiobook yet, but it's one of my biggest dreams to like hear somebody else read my story. And for authors, it's probably absolutely magical to hear their words and their characters come to life through someone's voice like that.
Absolutely. Yes.
So now let's get into your process. First, talking about how you get jobs to narrate audiobooks. You mentioned the audition, so I'm curious if authors directly come to you and say, "Hey, you're the narrator I want," and directly hire you, and how often that happens compared to you auditioning for projects.
It's a mixture of auditions and direct offers, but I would say probably the vast majority of the projects are gonna be coming through auditions, and, e especially when you're first starting out, right? It's like you're gonna be auditioning pretty much all the time, and there's a platform on, Amazon has this, audiobook platform called ACX, and that it's kind of like a marketplace, which it serves to match up indie authors or publishers with narrators, and that's where a lot of auditions are posted. And so when, new narrators, it's gonna be probably 100% auditions. But then I became more experienced, I began joining narrator rosters at audiobook publishing companies and connecting with indie authors via social media and, starting to get jobs that way. And then for the last several years, I was fortunate enough to have been receiving projects directly from a publisher, but now I'm having to hustle again because you can't take anything for granted, right? It's like, as a freelancer, there's like ebbs and flows. I mean, you're never going to have a steady, income, or it's just sometimes you have to keep hustling, right? Um, and yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm back to auditioning again. I'm continuing to receive audition requests. Um, and actually, this morning, was it this morning? I think there were 2 authors. One of them came back to me and they said they loved my audition, they wanted to talk about rates, and then the other one, was completely unsolicited. They reached out to me, they said they listened to my samples on my webpage, and they liked what they heard, and they thought I could be a good fit, so they wanted me to submit an audition for their project. So, you just never know.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm super curious what your preparation is for audition specifically. Like, are you given a certain excerpt from the book to read? Like, what's that look like in terms of the auditions?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So what typically happens as is that they will post a script for the audition that they want you to read to record and just give your best performance, and that's usually no more than like say 3 to 5 minutes worth. And so you record that and you edit it, whatever, and then submit it, and then you just wait. And then sometimes you could wait for a long time, or sometimes you could hear back the same day. Like one audition I did recently, fairly recently, the author got back to me the same day, and that's practically unheard of. Usually you have to wait. But that was very nice.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I'm sure like this is super subjective as well, especially like the authors who wrote the books. If they're the ones that are listening to the auditions and choosing, they have in their head what they imagine their character to sound like. And of course, no one narrating is going to be identical, but listening to different samples and auditions and determining who sounds closest and who best brings their character to life. And so early on when you were auditioning and maybe didn't get some, was it hard for you to understand, like, hey, this is not me, it's not my voice, there's nothing wrong with me, it's just the fit for the project?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, rejection is never easy, um, and that's it's I like to compare it, and it is very similar to acting, right? Because actors, they also have to go on all these auditions and, you know, give their performances, and then they wait, and a lot of times they get rejected too, and that's just part of the business, right? Is developing that thick skin, but we do it because we love it, right? It's just you don't do it because you wanna hear people say, "Oh, how good you are," and blah, 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 but it's like because there's something about telling that story, right, that just kind of compels you. You want to make those stories come to life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So once you are for sure going to work on a project, you did an audition, the author loved it, and you're officially on board. What is the preparation process before you actually start with recording when it comes to any kind of conversations with the author to get their vision, preparing how you're going to read the book with character voices and all that?
Okay. So, in terms of the prep, you know, one thing that I always do and that, narrators know that they should always do is to read the entire book before they even start recording. I I have made that mistake early in my career that I would think, "Oh, I'm just gonna start recording," but then I would find out, "Oh, no, I don't I this character is not who I thought they were," and it's always good to just read the entire thing just so you can understand not just what happens plot-wise, but also, the character development. Are we looking at a character who's going from age 6 to age 78? I mean, it's like you want to be able to see that progression and be able to map that out. Um, and in terms of the voices, yeah, especially if it's fiction, I will often, if there's a lot of different voices, I will when I encounter of a character, I will kind of get the context of what their personality is like, so I can kind of develop that in my head, but then I will also record a separate audio file for each voice, so I can refer to them as I record the entire book. Um, and yeah, so that okay, and the other reason I do prep is because to look for unfamiliar pronunciations, for names or words that I am not, that I just don't know. Um, and yeah, because you don't want to get to a name or a word that is comes up repeatedly, right? And then you're saying it the wrong way. I mean, that's just horrible because then you have to come back with lots of corrections, and nobody wants to do that. So I remember I did a Zoom call once with a fantasy author, uh, because there were so many strange names. She made up all these weird names, and I just didn't know how to pronounce a lot of them, so I wanted to run it by her and make sure I had the right pronunciation.
Yeah. That's so great to hear. I definitely think that's important. I mean, especially when the authors wrote the book, it's important for them to hear their characters' names pronounced correctly and all that. But yeah, I love how you read the book in advance, and I didn't even think about you recording little clips for each individual voice to refer to. That's so cool. That never even crossed my mind as something to do. But that makes complete sense where you're as prepared you can possibly be before you start recording. So whenever you start recording, I know it definitely varies based on the type of book and how long it is and other factors, but on average, how long does it typically take you to record an audiobook?
So, I think the easy answer would be okay, let me back up. So in the audiobook industry, an audiobook's length is measured by finished hours. So, for example, you might have uh, uh, like a thriller book that is like maybe 10 and a half finished hours long, which is how long it will take a listener to finish it. So, on average, one finished hour takes around 6 to 8 production hours to create, okay? Depending on the narrator's experience and if they decide to outsource any of the post narration production. And the entire production process includes not just narration, but editing, mastering, proofing, and corrections. So, yeah, so that's the short answer.
That's so long. Oh my goodness. You must have such a passion for it. What is the editing process like?
Editing process. Okay, so I don't know, I've done it both ways. I'll sometimes I'll record it in like a chapter, so and then I will go back and I will listen to it again and just, listen for any, and I'll edit it and just like listen for any corrections that I need to make or passages that I'm not, I'm just not happy with or whatever. So that I've done it that way. That no, that is generally the way I do it. Yeah, so I'll record it and then I'll go back and listen to it again and just, listen for any edits that I need to make.
Amazing. So after it's recorded and edited, you mentioned like the mastering and all that. Is that something that you do before the author hears it and asks for any last changes, or do you go back and forth with them, make sure it's exactly how they want it, and then you do the final touch-ups?
Okay, that's a good question. I will do all that before I send it over to the author. I want it to be in as good shape as possible so that so they're not being hit with all these corrections that I could have caught before it went over to them, right? So I try to give them as clean an audio, batch of files that I can. So then when I send it over to them, they'll take they'll typically take about a week or two to listen to it and then come back to me with what we call pickups. So basically, those are the corrections, right? So they'll say, oh, on this page, you missed this word or you mispronounced this word or whatever. And they also give me the timestamp. So I will know where to find that in the audio.
Do you typically get a lot of edits or not very many?
I think I'm getting better at it. I think I've definitely gotten better, like, over the years. Because in the beginning, yeah, I had a lot and also it depends on the, what do you call it? Like, the difficulty of the book. Like, say if I'm narrating a really dense, nonfiction book, has, like, tons of, unfamiliar terms or oh my gosh, there was one book I did. It was a commentary in color of the New Testament. So basically, these are all commentaries written, they're like, criticism, I don't know how to say, critiques, right? Critiques written by authors of color regarding the New Testament. And so a lot of them, they would reference these Hebrew or Greek words, you know, or just a lot of yeah, I mean, it just and because it was so dense and so full of all these, difficult to say words and things, that one did have quite a few corrections. But yeah, so it just depends on how easily the text flows. And yeah, but I think I'm a lot better at it now.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sure. I feel like I would be a bit of a nightmare. I'm so picky, like, with my music, when my producer sends me mixes, I'm like, "This breath here is annoying." He's like, "Are you serious?" Like, I'm such a nightmare. Like, I don't I feel like whenever I have an audiobook in the future, I'm gonna have to really get chill.
Ah.
Oh, man. So once the author approves everything, you make the final changes, what are the final steps to get the actual files to them that they will end up distributing?
Okay, well, so we kinda talked about how they will send back those corrections, I will make those corrections, and then they'll listen to it again, listen to all the files again, just to make sure that everything sounds good, and then once they approve the files, they do that in ACX, they'll click approve, and then they send payment to the narrator if it's a what we call a pay per finished hour project. And then the narrator, once they receive the payment, they will release the files to Audible, who then does an audio quality review, and then they publish them to their website for sale.
Oh, so you actually send the file, it's not the author.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes. Yeah, because I have to get paid. Well, or okay, no, that's one scenario. Okay, that's the scenario if it is a pay per finished hour project. What that means is that the narrator will charge a per finished hour rate. And then once, they get paid, then the author retains, they retain 100% of the royalties, right? And, so that's one scenario. The other scenario is if it is a royalty share, like I've done some royalty share projects where the narrator and the author split the royalties for each of for every audiobook that is sold. And in that case, if everything sounds good, then the author is the one who releases the files to Audible.
Amazing. So just to start winding down on our chat, what is one of the most rewarding things about being a narrator and what is one of the most challenging?
Okay. Well, I would say the most rewarding, thing about being a narrator is being given the privilege of telling an author's story, and I know that trust doesn't come easy because this book is their baby, and you can't just choose anyone to narrate it, so it's huge for an author to be able to trust me with their project, and, it's not just a business to me, but it's about connecting with people, connecting with the authors and then with their listeners, and it's really about finding that human connection on different levels. And I was gonna share about this author who I'm talking to now about narrating their book about living with Parkinson's disease, and she really liked the compassion that I brought to my audition. So hoping to sign that contract soon. um, and then the most challenging thing I would say is getting my name out there to both publishers and authors. I think that's the case for everyone, marketing, right? It's such a crucial part of this whole business, but, I don't think many people like to do it. I don't like promoting myself because I'm introverted, but, it's part of the job if I wanna work as a narrator, like, how will they know to hire me if they don't know about me?
Yeah, as a fellow introvert, I relate. Amazing. Well, just to wrap up this part of the chat, what advice do you have for anybody who's interested in being an audiobook narrator?
Okay. Well, I'd say, be prepared to be very patient when you're starting out and just throughout the entire experience. There's so much to learn, from setting up a sound booth, getting the right equipment, to using the software and mastering the right audio levels and just learning what good narration is all about. You have to be comfortable with spending hours in a cramped space reading to yourself. And there was actually a well-known nonfiction narrator named Sean Pratt. He has a great experiment for people who are interested in narrating. He posted a video called "So You Want to Be a Narrator?" And he says, so his experiment is to choose a book, it could be an ebook, and read it out loud for 1 to 2 hours in a small enclosed space every day for 2 weeks. And if you make a mistake, back up and reread the entire sentence again. And if you see an unfamiliar word, stop and look it up and don't try to guess. And if you're still interested in narrating after this test, then go ahead and start investing in your setup and training. And I think that's a great way to determine, who's serious about it, who's not, right? Um, and another thing to keep in mind is that narrating is not just reading books aloud. It involves acting skills, knowing how to convey the emotion of a scene, how to voice different characters, when to take the pauses and breathe. Um, and it's always, for me, continuing education is I'm always looking for ways to improve, because I know that I'm not the best out there, but there are definitely those I can learn from, and, just to know that it's not an overnight thing, this is a marathon. It takes persistence and patience and really a love for bringing those stories alive.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing everything you did. I found this incredibly fascinating. I love listening to audiobooks, and I've always been super curious about the whole process. So this was super fun. Now, though, we've made it to the plot twist where I get to ask you a random question you could have seen
Oh,
coming.
no.
So I know that you love classical music too.
Oh, yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to give you two pieces, and I want you to tell me a very specific subgenre of writing that you feel is best reflected in those classical pieces.
Okay.
Your two are Fur Elise by Beethoven and Clair de Lune by Debussy.
Oh, I thought you were gonna play them for me. No.
Oh, no way. I
Okay.
could, but I'm in my closet and my piano is not here.
I get that, I get that. Fearless, let's see. That's a great question. It's interesting. I've never correlated subgenres with music before. Such an interesting question.
There's no right or wrong answer. So just go on
I don't
vibes.
know. I don't know. Um, I feel like Fearless is because it's got that happy part too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not completely, contemplative or sad or whatever. You know what? I don't know why, but I almost wanna say Fearless makes me think of, like, memoirs for some reason.
Oh, yeah, okay. I can
You
I
know what
can
I
see
mean?
that. Yeah.
Because it's like I don't know, there's some sad moments, then you've got the
Yeah.
joy. I mean, there's, like, different parts.
Yeah, no, that's super good. Yeah, I didn't even think of that for that one, but no, that totally fits. What about Claire de Lune? One of my favorites.
Fleur de Lune, yeah, that's a really pretty one too. I don't know about subgenre, but it kinda makes me wanna go towards fantasy,
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
got that
Maybe like
ethereal.
gothic fantasy? Maybe like a darker edge fantasy, like dark fantasy. I wouldn't say it's dark
Mm,
though, it's just haunting. It just has like that haunting
mhm,
edge to it.
totally,
Yeah.
totally,
Yeah.
agree.
Awesome. Well, there we
Oh
go.
boy. I have to tell you though, Demi, when we were kinda, talking about pianos and your lovely, concert performance and all that
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
on, X, you inspired me to start practicing piano again. So I mean, not,
Yay!
like, consistently, but I did pick up it's a Chopin waltz. It's, the one in, E minor.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you know that one, but yeah, I started playing that one and it's so fun. I just like
Yay!
I used to play this really fast and really well, and now I can play it pretty slow. I'm trying to work my way up, but
Okay, well, you can work on that. I'm working on another Chopin piece. It's an nocturne in B flat minor. So I'm working on that. And it
Ooh,
is hard, but it's pretty, so
uh,
I'm working through.
it will be rewarding. It'll be worth it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Can you please share with everybody where they can connect with you online and learn more about you as an audiobook narrator?
Oh, yeah, my website is Kathy Lee, Kathyli audio.com, or you can find me on X or Twitter at Kathleen Lee Reads.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again for joining me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here and talk to you finally.
Yeah, finally. The universe
Yeah.
finally let it happen.
Yay!
Amazing. Well, listeners, I hope you enjoyed this chapter with Kathleen all about audiobooks. If you did, please consider leaving Literary Blend a review and giving it 5 stars to help others just like you discover it. Also, if you have friends in publishing you think would enjoy the show too, please pass it along to them. Thanks for listening, and until we flip to the next chapter, happy reading and writing.